Glenn was
Greenwald.
bananas lefty.
So it appears that Dave Rubin actually gave his analysis on Glenn Greenwald. Now, this is actually on the Will Cain podcast. Will Cain is the dude from ESPN First Take. He's a conservative guy. They had brought on Will Cain, I think, in like 2017 or 2016 because ESPN didn't want to have the liberal bias that they were being accused of. So I think that's why they brought him on. But anyways, as you guys know, Glenn Greenwald has made a huge shift in the past like year or two, where he went from before at least being like a left-wing dude to now just being a straight-on, full-on like right-winger. Just he's the apologist for the right wing now. That's what he does. This is the narrative that the right wing is trying to push. The right wing always has its very centralized narratives. It's pretty transparent to see what they do, and so what they do is they'll come up with one singular strategy typically, and they'll focus on that. So whether it be like CRT or transgender bathrooms, or they just come up with words, cultural Marxism, just random shit that doesn't really mean anything, doesn't really have much prevalence, but it sounds buzzwordy, and then you just stick to it and you just hammer that nonstop. So the new strategy from the right wing is to create this false narrative that the left-wingers or the liberals have gone so far left that it's pushed a bunch of left-wingers to the left, which is really ironic because really it's the complete opposite. This country is extremely right-wing as a political spectrum. If someone like Bernie Sanders is considered to be a socialist or far left-wing, you are in an extremely right-wing country, because Bernie Sanders on a political scale is really a centrist, maybe hypothetically even right-wing. Because he still supports capitalism in its existence. And I personally believe in a regular political spectrum, left-wing starts with the end of capitalism. It's the only way that it really makes sense. You could say centrism maybe for social democracy because it's a mix of, capitalism and socialism. But I think you can make that argument. But anyways, so this is the strategy. This is the new narrative that they're trying to paint into people's heads. This is going to be another example. Go ahead and check it out.
And that's why we're seeing people like Bill Maher, Andrew Sullivan, Matt Taibbi, Glenn Greenwald, all of a sudden going, whoa. I mean, all of a sudden it moved so far, so fast, it left a whole wake of people who would have called themselves, I don't even think moderately left. For some of those guys, they would have said they were pretty far left. And now all of a sudden... Glenn Greenwald
was bananas lefty. He was bananas lefty. He used to call me a racist on Twitter all the time. Now he's just repeating everything I said 5 years ago.
Well, okay,
So again, as you guys just saw there, Will Cain trying to say that. But Glenn Greenwald is a really interesting example because he showed a lot of hints of already kind of having like a right-wing flair or like a latent, right-wingness to him. Like he thinks he has thought that Citizens United was actually a correct ruling and that political spending is just free speech. But also some of the things that he said in the past like that, and some of the things that he has associated himself with, definitely kind of lean right wing. And so there was always, I feel like, kind of a latent right-wing stuff going on there, but he was pretty left-wing, supported Bernie Sanders, liberal. As Dave Rubin says here, he was calling him racist on Twitter all the time. So it's just kind of like, my question is, what happened, right? So obviously Dave Rubin, his diagnosis here is undeniable. He says, Glenn Greenwald was a bananas lefty. He used to call me a racist on Twitter all the time. Now he's just repeating everything I said 5 years ago. I don't know how anyone could this statement is just factual in what he says, right? So none of us are debating the statement because it's correct. If anything, we're talking about this because it's correct. My question is, what happened to Glenn Greenwald? Why is Glenn Greenwald all of a sudden repeating everything that Dave Rubin said 5 years ago? And this is always my personal question, because a lot of times these grifters, it's not even like they were genuinely anything at one point. Usually it's that they were just kind of bouncing off whatever is maybe most beneficial to them, whatever they felt better doing or makes them money. And so it's not like necessarily they even had a political ideology. Maybe they were just faking left-wing at the time, and then all of a sudden being right-wing became more opportunistic. So my question is, was Glenn Greenwald ever actually a lefty? Was he ever actually left-wing, genuinely heart of hearts principles? Did he ever genuinely believe in left-wing policy supporting left-wing politicians? That is the question. Or was that just especially given that he was in the whole Ed Snowden situation. I don't really know who would have supported. I mean, all he did was he disseminated the documents that Ed Snowden gave to him. That's all he did. But considering that was his role, I think the only people that would have even supported him were lefties anyways. Anybody else would have called him a traitor and treasonous. So maybe he just faked being left-wing the entire time because he was somebody who was never actually left-wing, right? So that's what is the most likely possibility. That's my personal belief. And so I'm thinking that this is likely who he really is. But I don't even know if I can confidently say that, because I don't even know if he has a real political ideology. I don't even know if he thinks about politics. I think for him right now it just comes down to liberal, Republican, conservative, Democrat divide and breakdown that he has, and he just sides with the Republican in each situation. Anything that's anti-liberal for him just feels good for him. Honestly, what comes across to me a lot with Glenn Greenwald, though, is it seems like a lot more psychological than anything else. He doesn't strike me like somebody who's in it for the money. I think he was probably making more money before, if I'm not mistaken. But don't quote me on that. I don't know the exact numbers, but he said that The Intercept was funded by a billionaire, so I'm assuming he was getting paid pretty handsomely, whereas now he's probably not getting paid as much, even though I'm sure he's on Substack. But how much is he really making on Substack? Anyways, it doesn't strike me so much as money, but I think the psychology of it for him, of being a contrarian. I think people downplay a lot the psychology aspect of these kinds of political people saying certain things. Being a contrarian, for example, will have a lot of psychological pull. Even for me, it'll feel good in a lot of situations just to go against the grain and feel like you're going against the grain. And so, you can be motivated by something just simply by however it makes you feel personally. So maybe going against the liberals makes him feel like a cool guy who's going against the grain, and he's the fighter and the unorthodox political player. When in reality, I don't think he really has any sort of political makeup or ideology personally. I just don't think he does. And so that's ultimately what it comes down to. And I'm curious to know what you guys think. This also applies to my thoughts on Joe Rogan, because I'm just not really of the belief, I'm not convinced that Joe Rogan all of a sudden had like all these just completely organic changes where I felt like, he went from, in the beginning, he was very liberal of the Joe Rogan podcast, then he went on to, in 2015, 2016, when the wave changed, he all of a sudden started sounding like a right-winger. Then in 2018, he sounds super progressive, and now he sounds like Milton Friedman. I'm just not buying it. I don't buy the bullshit. I don't buy that those were all genuine, just organic changes. I think he was right-wing in the beginning, and I think that that's really what he is now because the economic security has given him. That's what I think he is. So I don't believe that he had these organic changes. I don't even believe that he was left-wing to begin with. I think he was just doing whatever was he thought was beneficial for him. Obviously, for his image, flip-flopping is really beneficial because he doesn't want to be a left-wing or right-wing guy. And at the end of the day, I think that this is who Joe Rogan really is. And so is this just who Glenn Greenwald was the whole time? Was he lying? That's what I'm personally leaning towards, but I can't for a fact say that that's true, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this down below.